You know, a lot of people ask me if I'm anti-cop, if I'm a cop hater. It's not even that, man. I don't even want to go that route, the negative route. I want to go to the positive route. The positive route is I'm pro-justice. So that means if you're pro-justice, then you're against anybody who's going to initiate injustice on you. And I can't think of another demographic of people other than politicians who are psychopaths than law enforcement who go out of their way to violate the rights as they're claiming to serve and protect. And we all know it's harassing and protecting. So I'm truly not a cop hater. What I would really like to see is I would like to see cops step out of their authority and into their humanity and start treating other people like humans. That would be nice. This caught my eye last night. It popped up on my cell phone. DirectD put something on his community page, and he says, "This is hilarious. An Arizona judge is finally calling it like it is. Being a cop is not a profession." But I'm going to show you why I think that Arizona judge said that law enforcement is not a profession. Because it is a profession. It's professional racketeering. It's professional thuggery. It's basically a professional mafia. It's a professional gang. They are the thin blue line gang of corruption, far more dangerous than the Crips and the Bloods, because nobody's under any illusion that the Crips and the Bloods have any authority, legitimized authority over you, while the general masses, the population, thinks that police actually have legitimized authority over them to the point where they can tell them what to do. They can be tased by them. They can be handcuffed, as Delete Law says, handcuffed in torture cuffs. They can be thrown into a rape cage. But if you try to do that, you try pulling somebody over. You try pulling somebody over and saying, "Hey, you got a tail light out. Mind if I see your ID?" You're gonna be charged with harassment because they're gonna call the cops on you. But the cops can do things that if you did what they did, it would be called a crime, and it is truly criminal activity. So they are professional criminals. I would have to disagree with this judge that cops are professionals. They do have a profession, and that professional is a life of crime. DirectD says, meaning they are no different than your average teenager working at a fast food restaurant. When you look at this AZ Central write-up here, this is published again by AZ Central. It says, Arizona judge rules that law enforcement is not a profession. This is very interesting. Very interesting. And this is an opinion piece. It says, a challenge to the makeup of Arizona's Board of Executive Clemency redefined, not in a good way, the dedicated individuals who enforce. Remember what General George Washington said, the government is not eloquence, it's not reason, it is force. And like fire, it's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. So not in a good way. They're not professionals, according to this judge, not in a good way, to the dedicated individuals who enforce the law. Dedicated. What are they dedicated to? They're dedicated to a life of crime. The idea was not to throw the entire law enforcement community under the bus, although that's what the judge did. The idea was to challenge the makeup of Arizona's Board of Executive Clemency. This is so freaking interesting. What a psychological operation this is. That was the plan of the legal representatives of death row inmate Clarence Dixon. Now, Clarence Dixon, let's just talk about him for a second. This guy, if he truly is guilty, is a bad dude. This girl right here, Deanne Beaudoin, is somebody that he raped, stabbed, and strangled back in the 1970s. So he's been on death row for a long time. This is the guy. This is Clarence Dixon. He's now in his 60s. He's blind. They say that he's legally, mentally incapacitated. He's basically a mental misfit. He's got psychological issues. He's not fit to go on to death row, some people say, and yet here he is on death row. And there's another backstory to that I'll get to in a second. They filed a petition with the court saying that the board was illegally constituted. So this is the whole basis. This judge calls the law enforcement class not a profession, by having too many former law enforcement professionals on it. According to state law, quote, no more than two members from the same professional disciplined shall be members of the board at the same time. It's a good rule, this guy who writes this opinion piece says. One of those rare instances of common sense from our state lawmakers. The idea is to populate the board with a cross-section of the citizenry. By the way, you're not a citizen, you're a human being. If you're a citizen, then you say you're a denizen of the city and you're subject to the city's laws. That means you're subject to the edicts and laws and opinions and psychopathy of politicians. Since the group will be making life or death decisions. And then it says, who knew they weren't professionals? In Arizona, the governor can commute a death sentence. We're talking about Clarence Dixon, but can only do so if that is what the clemency board recommends. But according to Clarence Dixon's lawyers, since you have 3 law enforcement members sitting on that board, that means they cannot make this determination and this judgment to pass along to the governor so that he can actually commute or institute the death sentence. The board is supposed to have 5 members. 1 seat is vacant at the moment, and 3 of the others are filled with men who spent their professional lives in law enforcement, or so they thought. Michael Johnson and Salvador Freni each retired from the Phoenix Police Department after decades of service. Remember that last video that I just did? This is Police Chief Jerry Williams from the Phoenix Police Department. She has since been suspended, as have her 2 underlings, and their names are right here. This is John Collins. That's the Assistant Chief John Collins and the Executive Assistant Chief Mike Kurtenbach. They colluded together, all 3 of these at the top. Remember, a stream rises no higher than its source. If the source is the higher ups in the police department, then none of your underlings can be considered anything but corrupt. Crap flows downhill, in other words. So you got Jerry Williams, John Collins, and Mike Turkenbach, the number 1, number 2, and number 3 in the Phoenix Police Department, all wrapped up in corruption, saying that these protesters were gang members, putting them in prison based off of frickin' lies. And all of these 3 have been suspended now. So that's interesting that it comes from these people sat in the Phoenix Police Department. And this Lewis guy spent years working for different agencies within the same profession, or so he presumed. Maricopa County Superior Court Judge Stephen Hopkins disagreed, ruling that, quote, historically, law enforcement has not been thought of as a profession. And this guy goes, really? Because every single law enforcement officer I've come into contact with over the years, individuals who have studied criminal justice, gone through the rigorous training at the police academy, and spent years, sometimes decades, developing their skills and their expertise, considered themselves to be a proud, universally recognized profession. But this judge says, no, you're not professionals and you're not in a profession. Why did he say that? So that they can actually sit on that board and pass down the edict to the governor that this Clarence Dixon guy, needs to go bye-bye. Not so, according to this judge, who said of the non-profession of law enforcement, it is not regulated. We know that. Ain't nobody watching the hen house over there. It's the foxes. We're in control. We got the keys. I don't want you slit a couple of hens' throats over there. It's not regulated. I'll agree with that. They don't want transparency. They don't like people with cameras. They don't like people that know their rights, as other professions are, and has little of the characteristics of what is typically considered a profession. I'll have to disagree. I think they're a professional band of criminals. This must have come back as a shock to say the Phoenix Police Department, which presumably will now disband its Professional Standards Bureau. This guy's being facetious, since according to this particular court ruling, its officers are not professionals. The lawyers for inmate Dixon are contemplating an appeal of the judge's ruling. Why is he contemplating that? Because, again, if the clemency board is deemed, these 3 are deemed not professionals, then Dixon can't die. He can't get the lethal injection or the gas chamber, which that's what's being debated. And I think they went ahead, they asked him just recently within the last 3 days, do you want the gas chamber or the lethal injection? And he didn't say either way. So now they're going to do the lethal injection. And there's just a big debate in Arizona about this. So basically, if the judge's ruling that law enforcement is not a profession stands, then Dixon lives. If it doesn't stand, then Dixon dies, because they won't be constituted as professionals, which would result in the first time ever that the entire law enforcement community joined forces with a death row inmate. So even when the judge makes seemingly a right decision, saying that these law enforcers aren't professionals. It's for a different purpose. It's so that they can accomplish and achieve their goals and their objectives. And I want to know what you guys have to say about this. There's a lot of crazy stuff. Am I saying that Clarence Dixon should live? If Clarence Dixon did what they say that he did, that he raped, stabbed, and strangled this girl back in 1978 or whenever it was, then this guy needs to go bye-bye. See you later. We don't want you in society. Claim that you're, mentally unfit or you're crazy or whatever. Somehow there's been a determination that it's a violation of your Eighth Amendment, that if you're deemed technically insane, then you don't get to be subjected to the same punishment that you inflicted on your victim. It's just crazy. We live in an injustice system, an unjust world. So I'm not saying anything positive on behalf of this Clarence Wayne Dixon, if indeed he did commit the crime. And I'm not saying anything positive about this judge's ruling. What I am pointing out is, see how they manipulate the law? See how they manipulate, the judges manipulate all these decisions so that it can work out in their favor? It's a very, very strange thing. So let me know what you guys have to say about this. Leave your thoughts about this for the world and the global thought police in the comment section below. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification icon, give it a thumbs up, share it with everybody you know, and don't forget to subscribe to my private email list through my website, highimpactflix.com, and I will see you guys in the next video.